So I am joined on the podcast today by Catherine. Welcome, Catherine Toms.
Thank you. Lovely to be here.
We are going to be talking today about marketing your marketing, which I'm super excited to be talking about this because it seems to be a topic that comes up an awful lot in my world and is obviously also very topical to your world, Catherine. Before we get into that, do you want to give us a bit of an overview of your career history to date and what you do with yourself at the moment?
Absolutely. Thanks, Emma. And equally, yes, very excited to be here talking about this. So my career history, I actually spent the first chapter of my career on recruitment side, but within the marketing side of recruitment. So I worked with Hayes, big global recruitment company, but my role there was advising businesses on their employer value proposition, how they were going to attract and hire candidates. Really exciting time because it was when digital was just sort of coming to the fore and we were all exploring for the first time. Or should we be on social media? Should we have a Facebook page? What does it mean to shift to online applications? And how do we keep that all, accessible and friendly in a digital world? So that was an incredibly exciting time in my career and all about sort of talent attraction and marketing from that perspective. Then I sort of shifted and went more mainstream marketing. So I moved to a digital agency back in London, and again, doing more consultancy and advisory for sort of big global businesses on how do they navigate all of this digital world and think about their digital strategies from a marketing perspective. And then 7 years ago now, what are we now? Yeah, 7-8 years ago.
Goes quick, doesn't it?
It does. Moved back to Australia. So had a couple of years over in the UK and then moved over here to Australia and decided to set up on our own business. So I work with my husband, co-founder. And what we do today is training, advising and upskilling marketing teams so that they can be more effective and more efficient in their results. And one of the big challenges that comes up often is this question of how marketing is perceived internally and how marketing can really effectively articulate their value and demonstrate business growth. So really, really a passionate topic of mine to talk about with you today.
Yeah, we were just talking before we started recording, because it is one also from my side that comes up all the time. Particularly, I would say, I guess it makes sense, particularly amongst some of the more senior candidates that I talk to, it's something that's very much front of mind for them. And interestingly, particularly when I'm having a conversation with someone, they've either come to me because they're actively looking, or we're having a conversation because perhaps they're passively looking. And it's often this is the root cause of why. They're either in a business where they feel that marketing either isn't understood and or isn't valued, often both. And one of their key drivers for a potential new role is wanting to get to a business where it is simply, or maybe if they've built their career more in the SME space, they want to work for an owner or a CEO, MD who truly understands values and builds in marketing to what they're doing. So yeah, it comes up all the time. So.
Yeah, and likewise, absolutely. When we're talking with CMOs or marketing directors about how we can better support them in the business, it 100%. Those thoughts are really echoed. It's like, well, how do we have a better voice in the organization? How can we shift away from being that traditional order taker of, I'll speak to marketing because I need an email sent out, or I'll speak to marketing, they do the nice logos, don't they? Or they can design something on Canva. And really shifting the dial in the organization, that they're much more strategic and much more driving the conversation and have a different voice in the organization. And certainly, absolutely, the businesses that are most effective is when, the CEO and the CFO get it.
Yeah.
And marketing has that seat at the boardroom table and can really articulating effectively that the marketing is a business critical department, and they are not a cost center. They're driving growth and impacting growth and truly understanding the customer and how you can position yourself in the market with them. So yeah, very, very exciting time and very topical to be discussing this at the moment.
Do you have a sense, just as you were saying that, I wondered, like, historically how we got here? Do you have a sense of why it is that way, or has been that way?
Yeah, and I think, let's not sugarcoat it. We've got a way to go, but also reflecting, I think we've come an awful long way. I think, yes, historically, marketing was perceived very much under the arm of like internal comms or PR, corporate affairs or whatever, and wasn't perceived as being, a growth driver. And part of that was caused by marketing, I guess. We were very much about branding and creatives, and the conversations that we were having didn't necessarily align with boardroom conversations. We all know if you start talking about brand awareness, a CFO's eyes are going to glaze over and they're going to wonder what on earth this stuff is that you're talking about. So I think historically marketing was in a different place. And then if we look at all of those avenues of digital and how that has expanded the remit of marketing and accelerated it in the 20 years that I've been supporting marketing teams, goodness me, we have gone from thinking about creativity and branding to now we've got data. We're leading the MarTech, we're leading the technology, we're leading the customer experience, and really at the forefront of understanding customer insights and research. And so the remit of marketing has adjusted phenomenally in the last 10, 15 years, but the conversation hasn't necessarily caught up with that. So I think that there's a bit of a double-edged sword with digital as well, in that we've got all this data and all these opportunities, but what that's also led to is the temptation to really report on very short-term metrics and short-term performances, because it's like, well, hang on, we can now see how many people clicked an ad or visited a website page, and everything becomes so tunnel vision on such a short period of time. We've almost lost that perception and that true understanding of all that brilliant stuff that branding and creativity and the longer term play of marketing brings to the table. So I think there's a number of factors at play there, the changing role of marketing, but then also this very short-termistic view of wanting the sugar hits and the instant results.
Yeah, as you say, it is almost a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because it's gone from perhaps not being able to report or certainly attribute or give metrics in the same way, and suddenly, we can give all these metrics, and maybe the pendulum's just swung a little bit too far.
Yeah.
I think the other thing you mentioned there, and I'm sure we'll come back to it in more detail, was the opportunity of marketing to truly be the voice of the customer. And if voice of the customer, as it should be, is kind of woven into everything, then for marketing is woven into everything. And I know that's a very simplistic way to look at it, but I think there's an shift to customer.
And again, I think that's why it's topical to be talking about it now, because I do think that, with as soon as we get any kind of challenging economic climate, and customer behaviors at the moment are so unpredictable because, we're off the back of the pandemic. We've got people's, cost of living being brought up. They're making different purchasing decisions, different choices. So almost what you understood about your customer a year ago, never mind 3 years ago, has changed. And businesses are kind of aware of that and recognize that marketing is the person that's got the most data on, well, who is our customer? What's driving their behaviors? What are they looking for in today's market? So I think there's a real opportunity there for marketing to shifting the conversation, because never more so has the customer been more important in the eyes of the business, in terms of how do we, sustain growth and drive growth, even though the economy's pretty wobbly in a lot of different industries at the moment.
Yeah. From a framework perspective, if I'm a CMO and I come to you and say, hi, Catherine, we've got this issue, I don't think the business really understands what we do. How do you proceed? What does that pathway, what does that kind of framework look like?
Yeah, 100%. So there's 3 things that we do every time we work with businesses on this challenge. I'll take you through the 3 of them. The first one, we actually ask marketing to imagine that you've all gone away on a cruise. and we get them to
It's a
sit
nice
in the
place
room.
to start, isn't
I
it?
know, exactly. You've gone away on a big company cruise and you're off and you've got no digital connection and you're off and you're enjoying your poolside and you've got your cocktails and your sunsets, and the business is on their own. They've got to fend for themselves. And the first thing we get them to do is imagine, well, what is the impact on the business? And what's really interesting about this exercise is initially it surfaces a lot of, oh, they wouldn't be able to send an email. Oh, we wouldn't be on social media. Oh, we couldn't update the website or talk about new products or new services or new stories or new messaging. And then what we do is we dig a bit deeper with those conversations and say, well, what would that mean? What would that mean? And just keep going and keep going till we get to the true purpose of the fact that, well, that's going to mean that we don't have incoming calls. We don't have a presence with our customers. We're not influencing behaviors. We're not driving sales and revenue. And it's a huge light bulb moment that all of those execution and tactical things that we do, whatever they look like within marketing, ultimately have a revenue goal and ultimately have a behavior that drives business growth. So that's step one, is almost this light bulb moment of, well, hang on, yes, we do this, but ultimately it's all about driving commercial gains and business growth. The second piece we do is then talk about actually how marketing works. And this comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning between long and short marketing. And I'm an absolute huge fan of Les Binet and Peter Fields and the work that they did, which is nearly a decade old now, but has truly stood the test of time. So they're known as the godfathers of effectiveness. And essentially, they came out about 10 years ago with a huge report. So it's all based on data. It's all scientifically proven. This is not just some airy-fairy idea, which is about the way that marketing actually drives true growth in business. And for marketing to drive true growth, you've got to have long-term marketing, which is things like branding and creative campaigns and storytelling and, content marketing and all of those good things that keep you front of mind and help customers understand you and who you are, supported by activations. So activations are the short-term sugar hit of, we need to generate leads for a webinar. We need to drive, basket size for a sale. They're the real bottom of the funnel end of things. And so for them to work effectively, depending on the industry and depending on the business, you need to have anywhere of a split between 60% branding and 40% activations. And the light bulb moments that happen when we articulate that with people and they really understand how marketing plays together and that you need both to be effective are huge. Because I think that's really where, particularly in boardroom conversations, or if you're taking a brief with somebody in C-suite or somebody that faces into the business, if they don't really understand the way marketing plays together and the way marketing works, the temptation is to switch off a lot of this branding and, less, as you say, less attributable elements of marketing. So, that's two of them. Shall I pause there before I go on to number three? Because I feel like we've kind of said a lot there. Is there anything you want to unpack before I move on?
I particularly like the short and long term. And again, there's all the stuff that sits underneath that. As you said, it's those boardroom conversations and how they actually or what they actually understand by the terminology. As simple as you say marketing, they're thinking, I don't know, social media, or, oh, we've got a nice TV advert running, like whatever it is. It's perhaps not the actually very complex web of all these sort of interlocking things that are going on, and they might only sort of see the surface level. So I guess there's an inbuilt education piece there as well, isn't there?
Yes, and this comes back to the point, doesn't it, of we need to be better at marketing our marketing. And if you think about reading the room and speaking the language of the business, if we're talking in marketing jargon and marketing speak, which is, oh, we're going to run a brand awareness campaign, you know, the manager in the business is going, well, what does that actually mean? So we need to get better at articulating the value of what we're expecting to deliver and why we're doing the things we're doing. So instead of using things like brand awareness, we might say, look, we want to influence future customers here. We want to drive future growth, so that we're not anticipating that we're going to get an immediate ROI or sales off this particular campaign. But what we are able to do is get in the hearts and minds and heads of a new customer group that perhaps we're not talking to at the moment, or we want to educate them about a new product or service or positioning that we're doing. But if we can talk in that kind of language, that this is future revenue growth, this is future forecasting, this is, you know, driving longer term revenue, influencing future customers, that is a whole lot more compelling to somebody in the business than talking about, oh, we're going to do some impressions or vanity stuff that they don't understand. So I think that us being able to educate and speak the language of the business and talk in their words, it is a big part of how we market our marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to what you were saying before about the double-edged sword of digital, you can kind of see how that's happened, can't you? Because they've probably, and you can understand how it happens, focused on those shorter term metrics because they can show that they're delivering, and then to suddenly go in and start talking about something that might take 2 years, you can understand the disconnect there, or the confusion by people in the business going, well, hang on, we were what happened to all these numbers? Like, we were talking about a 60% growth of web traffic, that I understand, and suddenly we've switched to talking about something completely different. So you can see how it happens from both sides.
100%, and absolutely that sugar rush of being able to report on, you know, oh, we've grown our followers on Instagram, or we've got X number of views on our post. And I think within most organizations, there was a report that came out of the UK last year that was done in conjunction with the Financial Times, and they were saying the average reporting cycle in most businesses is at best 30 days. And if we think about, you know, okay, so some business to consumer businesses, it might only take 30 days to convince me I need to buy a new moisturizer or a new lipstick. But if you're up on a business to business cycle, and we're talking about a new SaaS system or a new payroll or a new, you know, anything that's a big major buy and involves, you know, a number of stakeholders and a number of decision makers, you might only do that purchase once every 3-4 years. So the cycle to buying is incredibly long, and we need multiple touch points with our customers through that cycle, but they're not going to demonstrate ROI or results, you know, from a financial perspective immediately. So we've got to understand that customer and what that cycle to buy looks like, because if we're then tracking campaigns and we're only tracking it over a month, and yet somebody's decision to purchase might be a year or 2 years or even longer, we're kind of missing the point, aren't we? So we've got to get better at putting the customer front and center, understanding what that journey looks like, understanding where our particular campaign and what behavior are we trying to influence at that point, so that we can then articulate success and results in a way that are meaningful to the business.
The third one?
Oh, my third one, well, it talks about that. It's data, really, isn't it? And I think it's digging beneath the data. I think data comes in to a number of different pieces. I think if we want to shift the conversation, and what you're saying about frustration is certainly what we hear with a lot of organizations we work with. They feel like marketing is the end of the conversation. So we've already decided that there's a new product, or there's a new service, or we want to position ourselves differently in the eyes of the customer, or there's a new business strategy or a new business goal. Marketing are kind of like the last people to involve in that conversation. As you said, often, you know, the manager will already come and say, oh, we need to do a social media campaign, or I want you to send an email. And that's really missing all of those beautiful insights and knowledge and experience that the marketing team have. So we want to be driving that conversation earlier in the piece, but that's by us taking those insights to the business and having really data-driven conversations around what we're seeing, and why we think what we should do is a really good idea. So one organization that I was talking to, they were saying, a way to shift that conversation is a manager comes to marketing and says, hey, I need to do an email campaign. And you're like, yeah, that's a brilliant idea. Let's just go away and have a look at some insights. We'll work out if there's anything else we should be doing. We'll have a look at our customer data, and then we'll come back to you with a plan. So it's not saying no and feeling like the needle's shifted immediately and hang on, I thought I could just come to marketing and get my things done. But it's subtly sort of moving that conversation away from being an order taker to a strategist, but based on data. And that data is really important at that beginning brief taking point when we're mapping out the scope of what we should be doing and advising the business. And then equally again at the end, when we tell the stories about what our campaign was able to achieve, that we choose the right data points and we articulate them in the right way, that the business can genuinely understand the value of what we did. So I think that, yeah, it all comes down to data and insights, doesn't it?
Yeah, and such an important point there on the strategy piece and the point at which marketing enters the conversation.
Yeah.
As you said, it's often very much towards the end.
Yeah.
But the value of marketing actually being there, maybe not from the get-go, maybe that's just a utopia, but certainly very further towards the start of that conversation and actually being involved in those more strategic commercial conversations. And she said feeding insights, feeding data, and actually shaping the path, not just being the order taker at the end saying, well, we've made this decision, go and do this, might actually be the wrong decision. And then marketing's in a bit of a bind, aren't they? Because if you say you don't want to say no, but equally you've got data that it's actually perhaps not the most effective way, but then you've got to try and unravel it to then sell the solution that perhaps would be more effective.
Yeah, 100%. And that's the cultural shift, isn't it? From marketing being perceived as a tactical executor to actually a strategic partner in the business. And that comes down to the businesses where we've worked and seen it most successfully. It's where marketing is seen as a collaborator. And you've got that seat at the table as early as possible in the piece, where we are going, okay, we are proactively going out to the business and talking about, okay, our strategy for the next quarter should involve X, Y, Z, and we should be doing these things, as opposed to always being on the back foot and then going, all right, can you just do? And as you say, by that point, you're trying to unpack and work backwards. So it's that shift. And I mean, how that happens is all down to the culture of the organization. But if you've got a strong marketing lead, a strong CMO, who can actually, has got the buy-in and the belief of CEO and CFO, that's when it all kind of floods down and people see it differently and start to really see the value and dial up the value that marketing can bring, that it's going to be a whole lot more effective and, strategic, and we're going to stop wasting money and we're going to be able to get out to market quicker because we've had those conversations earlier. Whereas the businesses where you're stuck and it's like, yeah, you're right at the end and you're the last thought and the can you just do, it's incredibly frustrating for marketing teams to be feeling like that, because they've got all these brains and research and genuinely, as you say, know that it's probably not the best idea. No, we're not going to stick a billboard and a wrap on a bus stop. We can actually do some other things here.
Have you experienced with a client or a business that has gone from that point of a culture of they're the colouring in department, we don't need to involve them, to actually truly integrated, strategic, commercial? Have you witnessed that journey? And I'm interested how long that cultural shift would take as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Emma. And yes, lots of businesses we've seen shifting the needle. How fast it takes, I really think depends on a number of factors. Again, who's around that boardroom table? If you've got a fully embedded believing CFO, CEO, you can roll this out relatively quickly and start to change the internal comms and perception of the business. And that all comes from the top, doesn't it? If the CMO is being given a voice in those rooms and is really trusted as a strategic advisor and really coming with great decisions and great direction and, really got a clearly defined and understood role of marketing, of how marketing influences growth, that trickles down from the top down. And then bottom up, that changes the conversations that the marketing team are having in the business. So, that's as you say, the utopia. How long it takes varies. How big is the business? How big is the marketing department? Culturally, how embedded is the old ways of working, and how much change management and shift do you need to do to evolve it to new ways of working? So I'd say anything from, 18 months to 5 years could be a very natural course of this. And then one particular example, yes, worked with a fantastic financial advisory business up in Queensland. They've got about 100 financial advisors. And they very much historically, marketing had kind of sat under, your kind of corporate affairs, internal comms, non-profit making part of the business. Head of the table, not really a commercial thinker, more of that old school branding, creative. And a new head of marketing, CMO, went in, and just, it's sheer strategic persistence.
Yeah.
So just constant.
Nice phrase. I like that.
Strategic persistence. But, having that positive, smart business conversations over and over, and then just repeatedly telling the stories and demonstrating success over time, that just then evolves and the perception shifts. And this is not a big marketing team, we're talking 3 or 4 people, but the impact that they have been able to make on the business and the driving seat they now have in being able to drive the conversation and say, look, this is what we're doing. And, they are showing that here's our kind of annual, quarterly plan. And then, of course, they're then shifting in and supporting the business as campaigns roll around. But they've actually even added strategy to their division name. So, they're not just the marketing team, they are the strategic marketing or the marketing strategists. And it's just that whole shift. But data, driving the conversation and backing it up as soon as you do anything. The story you tell is all about the revenue and the commercial value. And it's just having that voice is just going to evolve, thinking over time.
And I suppose, as well as you said, it's that there is, I guess, always an inbuilt element of time, because you've got to be able to prove it. It's the conversation up front, and then it's do the thing and then report back on the results. And you've got to be able to demonstrate, and that in itself takes a period of time.
So small changes. As I said, I was in a marketing team, and there was that very old school perception, and a manager is coming and saying, oh, hey, just do this email. I think it's like saying to the business, thank you for those insights, that's really, really helpful. It's having the credibility to take a really detailed brief, and actually saying, well, why did we think that? Or, what else have we thought about? So asking the questions around it that, again, show that you're thinking commercially, and saying, whatever we do, I want to make sure we drive the best impact. We're really delivering growth here. So that, again, you're a collaborative partner, not an order taker. And then slowly shift out and say, well, yeah, that's a great idea if it is, or suggesting an alternative and saying, oh, well, that could be an option. But what about, have we thought about the reason I thought that might work is I looked at this data from these campaigns, and that delivered us really good success metrics, if I can show them to you. And then just slowly. And then as soon as they see, well, hang on, and it's almost that being brave enough to say, well, look, we were going to invest this amount of money. Had we just done this, we probably would have only got that. But look what we were able to achieve when we did X, Y, Z. And having those kind of conversations, because ultimately, wherever the person is in the business, they want to be perceived as successful. They want to, everyone's under budget pressures and budget constraints at the moment. So the more that we can demonstrate, well, actually, we helped you achieve blah, blah, blah by doing this. It's just starting to have those conversations. And the more that you can show that strategic advice and show the results, it really helps shift the needle from the bottom up. So if you've got, that beautiful CMO driving, it's brilliant. If you're slightly challenged and you're stuck, you can start to shift from, being just within the marketing team as well, start to shift those conversations and ask different questions.
Yeah. Do you also, or have you also had clients where they're in an organization that is perhaps quite siloed in its structure, and there are some inbuilt challenges there? The one that often comes to my mind that I hear people talk about a lot is how they work with their sales team, or how they don't work with their sales team is probably the more accurate description. And partly it's structural, and you know, it's kind of sales over here, marketing over here, and never the two shall meet. How do you approach that? How could someone approach that type of issue?
You're 100% right, Emma. We could have a whole podcast just
Yeah, I know, that's enough.
sales and marketing. So interestingly, you know, there's a new term that's being spoken about a lot, which is revenue marketing. And essentially, if we think again about the way customers behave, there's no traditional handoff anymore. It used to be, oh, marketing does the kind of top of funnel, and we do the, you know, the brand and the awareness, and we get the messaging out there, and then sales comes in and closes the sale. And it doesn't really work like that anymore. And it's certainly not the way customers think anymore, is it? It's sort of this interchange, and it's beautifully woven where there's opportunities in the point where having more of a sales message or having that human interaction to nudge you on to the next point is really important. But then actually it goes back to a softer marketing message, and it's more around you know, the stories we tell about customer successes, or, you know, the value that you can get from the product and services. So there's not this direct marketing that stops sales. And where we see successful teams working is where there's that really great interplay, and they see that, you know, by understanding those different touch points of where sales should come in with those more converting messages versus marketing, is actually, again, really drives up growth. So HubSpot came out with this term, oh gosh, must be about 5 or 6 years ago, called smarketing. And it was like smart businesses understand that sales and marketing are so joined together and joined at the hip. So, and it is challenging, but if you think about it, you know, marketing drives the opportunity for sales. And without marketing, sales aren't going to have the opportunity to close the sales. So how do you get those two working together? And again, that's having good heads of that get the value, and being able to demonstrate where we weave them in together, we actually achieve way more growth. And, you know, marketing not trying to claim, oh, we drove all the sales. It's like it's understanding how the two parts work together and optimizing them.
Yeah, and I'd imagine falling out of that, probably some clever, thoughtful metrics around attribution. So it's not everything's 100% sales, or as you said, marketing just claiming it's them.
Yeah,
there needs to be some really detailed analysis done actually of how you can attribute revenue across the two functions. Yeah,
100%. And you know, this is where it comes to working together, doesn't it? Because the last thing we want is marketing claim, oh, we drove, you know, 200 new leads, and the sales team are literally head in hands going, yeah, but only 3 of them were qualified or valuable.
Yeah.
But then equally, we've had situations where, you know, the marketing team are doing phenomenally, but then the sales team weren't picking up the quality leads. So if you can find those points in the funnel where things are sort of dropping off or not working, then everybody ends up being better, don't they? So it's all about honing into the metrics, understanding that customer journey that we spoke about. How long is it? What are those key points? What are average time lengths between buying cycles, so that you can really sit down and have a strategic conversation with the sales team around, well, where does marketing play? And then how do we make sure that as soon as there is a qualified lead, you know, you've done a beautiful webinar and you've had some great people drop off the back of it, what is the sales plan to pick them up and nurture them to the next stage? Because if they're not working together, there's an awful lot of inefficiency and wasted effort, and that's going to have a negative impact on your customer perception. Because I said, they don't see that was marketing and now I've been handed off to sales. They just want an amazing experience.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Do you think part of the challenge here, and again, it's perhaps that point about the double-edged sword of maybe part of the modern challenge is just the proliferation of what is now marketing, and how you actually get a handle on that? And I say it's the double-edged sword. There's obviously so many benefits to that, and the advent of digital and social and all of these things which have an enormous impact. But at the same time, there's a huge inbuilt challenge, because there's so many different channels now, and how we actually weave that together.
And I think this is where it really truly is marketing's superpower, because there is that overwhelm, and you can drive yourself nuts trying to be across every single channel and every place that your customer could possibly be. And that whole scattergunning approach it all comes back to more strategic thinking and really getting inside the shoes of the customer at that point in the buying cycle and saying, right, what actually do they need at this point? Where are they hanging out? Where is it most important that we show up and connect with them? And if you can back that up with, we've got amazing marketing technology now, we've almost got an overwhelm of data. But if you can get into your data and understand those key customer touch points, that avoids that, oh, well, hang on, we stuck an email out to somebody, when actually showing up on LinkedIn or Instagram would have been a way more effective touch point at that point. And it enables us to then really guide the business, because there's just a plethora of channels and choices and things that we can do. Our biggest job is to declutter all of that and really focus in and not be feeling like we've got to spray and pray and do everything, but using our data to really draw insights, understand the customer and the messaging that they need at that point and where they're hanging out, and then bring those two together is really where we can start to drive conversations around, right, well, we've dialed up effectiveness, we've dialed up efficiency, we've reduced wastage, and that's going to really speak the volume of the business as well.
I just want to return to our title of marketing your marketing, and something was your title, but something that had actually come from one of our first actually round table event, which we're now doing quarterly. Next one will be coming up at the end of June, where we brought together a small group of senior marketers and basically asked them what's top of mind for you at the moment, what are your challenges, and share insights within the group. And this topic came up, and there was a lot of interest and a lot to be said about it. But again, there's almost this kind of inbuilt irony that you're, as marketers, actually not sometimes that great at marketing, not so much just yourself, but your department, your work, and what your department and your work can actually achieve. Is there in terms of, I guess, training, degrees, when people are, I'm not a marketer myself, I haven't been trained or gone through formal education as a marketer. Is it something that comes up? Are people taught to do that in a sense? No, that would be my assumption.
This is the problem. I think marketers, we're a hilarious breed, aren't we? Because we absolutely love marketing. We are so passionate about marketing. Yeah. We believe in it, and we love it, and we gobble it up for breakfast, and we live and breathe it. But the biggest thing that we can remember is that our customers don't care about marketing, and the business doesn't care about marketing in the way that we do. And that's where you're absolutely right. We get taught, if you've gone through any kind of education, a lot of it is focused around articulating things like brand awareness and a lot of these sort of more fluffier, less attributable things. Yeah. So becoming a commercial marketer, I think, is one of the biggest skills that you can have. I certainly lean heavily. There's a lot of stuff that comes out of the IPA in the UK. And they talk a lot about marketing effectiveness, Marketing Week as well. They have a whole load of studies on effectiveness and talk a lot. And the IPA is also where the Les Binet and Peter Field's work came from. So yes, unfortunately, there's a gap in the way that marketers are educated and brought in to then how we need to communicate. There's a bit of a missing link at the moment in that whole thinking strategically, thinking commercially. Mark Ritson, closer to Australia here, he definitely somebody that marketers should follow and read. He can be quite polarizing, doesn't mind the the odd F-bomb here and there, but he's one of the smartest marketers I know in terms of that thinking and, that, hang on, marketing ironically does have a communication problem that's been largely caused by marketing. So let's stop talking about marketing and start talking about business and commercial growth and impact and all of those good things that we know are going to much more connect back in with the business and really help educate them. So I'll definitely share some resources with you that we can stick into the podcast notes for your readers to go and learn more about.
As I was asking that question, my assumption was that you were going to say no, because that's kind of what you see playing out. So
Absolutely. The
Yeah.
training that Steve and I go in to do is to undo a lot of that
Yeah.
thinking and talk about, no, these are the metrics you should be reporting on. This is how to take a really effective brief and really understand what you're doing. This is how to communicate strategically within the business. This is how to reposition the value and articulate the value of marketing. That's a lot of the in-house corporate training that we do, because it's trying to fix that problem. But yeah, there's some great resources as well for your marketing listeners to go out to and read up and educate themselves on that. I would really, really encourage them. I think that's a huge skill that's going to be very much sought after by all businesses.
Yeah, and my next question you've kind of answered, because I was going to say, if someone's if they're thinking about themselves as an individual and perhaps they're not in a business where they're going to have the opportunity to bring in training or do that kind of thing, what can the individual do?
Yeah, so absolutely. IPA, as I said, they run some courses. Some of them are paid, a lot of them are free. So there's some great stuff on there, as I said, and that's all about shifting the way that we communicate about marketing. A lot of it plays into as well how we work with our agencies, because this is not just an in-house marketing problem. There is still some challenges with the way that agencies report on effectiveness. And if there's a disconnect there and we're working with external partners and they're reporting back on vanity metrics or impressions or brand awareness campaigns, we've got a role there both ways. Absolutely. Internally within the business, but also with our agency partners. So the IPA is great. I absolutely love the Uncensored CMO podcast. Brilliant. There's a whole load of discussions on there as well that I just feel like I'm sitting with some of the smartest marketers in the room. And I just love the way people's brains are really thinking and working and guiding this as a more, business critical strategic thinking part of the part of growth than historical stuff. So Uncensored CMO, IPA have got some courses, and absolutely I'll also share some content on LinkedIn as well, so your listeners are very welcome to jump in and follow any of the things that I'm seeing and sharing and insights that we can bring as well.
It does feel like it's quite a, without wishing to sound too dramatic, quite a pivotal point in time to actually be able to make some of these shifts. I think, as you said, some of the technologies change, digital, social, all of those things. And this feels like it could go one way or the other at this point in time. There's a real opportunity to embrace change, move, as you say, a little bit more towards that strategic commercial approach. And I guess from a recruitment perspective, probably the people that do will be the ones most in demand. It's the same as in any industry, isn't it? The ones that don't may find it more challenging.
Yeah, and we're seeing this with technology as well, aren't we? Like we've moved away from attribution modeling to now trying to understand this marketing modeling mix and whatever that looks like. We're seeing it with Meta and Google as well. Yeah. Historically, they've always reported on click metrics and impression metrics, and now they're trying to shift towards more demonstrating longer term impact on conversions. So you're right, from the channel up, the whole way that we talk and the whole way that we converse about the effectiveness of marketing, that needle's shifting. And it's one of the challenging things about being in marketing. I've been doing it for 20 years now. I think the one guaranteed thing, it never stands still. It never stays the same. It's always evolving in our capabilities, but always evolving in the thinking. And I think, we're in an amazing place at the moment where marketing is way more influential. We have got a bigger seat at the table. We have got a bigger voice in the organization. And, having that ability to really have those conversations with confidence. If it's not something if you've got to shift that needle within your organization, go out and read some stuff. So Marketing Week has got bags of case studies on there that are, they have a subscriber model, but they have an awful lot of free content as well, where you can read about all sorts of businesses from, big, well-known organizations like Airbnb and Dove and, right down to smaller businesses, how they've been able to kind of change this and what they're seeing. So even if you haven't got any internal examples to speak about initially, educating yourself on that stuff and being able to say, well, hey, backed up with data, this is what's happening in other organizations, is going to really help you get that credibility and as you say, be the marketers that are in demand in the organization, or if you're looking for your next move.
Yeah, I do think that is one of the positives of where we're kind of at the moment, just the amount of information that's available. As you said, whether it's podcasts, whether it's content online, if you are motivated to find answers and to try and elevate perhaps your own thinking or grow your own thinking, there's so many resources that are available to you.
Absolutely. Yeah. And the couple of keywords there is, just search for long and short marketing. There's a whole bunch around that. And then marketing effectiveness as well are probably the two, in terms of if you're going to find good evidence, good case studies to kind of educate yourself, change your thinking, change your conversation you're having with management internally, there's brilliant resources there that you could start with.
Nice. My final question, Catherine, it's always the final question here on the podcast. What do you know now that you wish you knew then?
Oh, goodness me. I think just the confidence, but you know what? 100%, the confidence you are never, ever going to know everything. And that's okay. That is okay. I think early on in my career, I always would fear that I'd been caught out. I think, we all suffer with that imposter syndrome, don't we? And feeling like, goodness me, I've lost my credibility. I haven't heard about that thing or knew about that thing. But because it's always changing so quickly and always evolving so fast, I think you just have to trust that, yes, keep yourself educated, stay abreast of what's going on, but it's okay to not know everything. It's okay to then say, no, I'm going to research that. I'm going to look into that. I'm going to, go away and educate myself on that point. But it's absolutely okay. You will not know everything. As we've talked about, there's a plethora of channels, there's a plethora of approaches, there's different thinking, there's different frameworks, there's new metrics, and gosh, we love an acronym. So if anything ever comes across your desk and you're like, oh, I'm not sure about that, never be afraid to ask and put your hand up and say, yep, tell me more about that, or what were you thinking here? Or go away and do a quick Google yourself.
Yeah.
But don't ever feel like you've been caught out, because that you will never know everything. But stay educated.
Yeah. And I think as well, there's sort of a layer underneath that as well, of particularly if you're the subject matter expert in the room, you already will know so much more than people who aren't marketers, who don't have that level of and as you say, there's always that voice in the back of your head that says, oh, you should know that, or you missed an opportunity to say that, but you probably already do actually know more than the people in the room at that point in time. And if you don't, a quick Google, come back to you.
Absolutely. So absolutely, you're right. Be an expert in your confidence topics and make sure you're reading and learning and staying ahead. But things just do change overnight. As we said, the perils of being a trainer in this space is, you're literally driving to a training session and
something's changed on the way.
Instagram released an algorithm update overnight. So you've got to be on the fly. And, every time we do training, we get asked questions and people say, oh, hey, what about this thing? Or where's this going? And, it's like, that's an absolutely brilliant point. Nobody's ever asked me that before. Let me come right back to you. So you don't have to kind of, blag your way through an answer. That's not at all the approach. It's learning from everybody around you and bringing those combined insights together to think about what the future looks like, because it's certainly changing all the time.
Absolutely. And as you said before, I think that's part of what's so exciting about marketing, isn't it? That you're not in a static field. It's constantly evolving, constantly changing, and new and interesting things coming from all directions. And whilst there's some inbuilt challenges with that, obviously, it also does make it incredibly exciting and fulfilling at the same time. I think
certainly keeps us all on our toes. You're right, embracing that change. But as well recognizing the difference between chasing shiny new toys to coming back to strategy. And that's what we always advise people do. And again, you know, I'm sure all your marketers are probably hearing about, oh, well, ChatGPT can do that now, and it's all about AI. And, you know, it's always coming back to, well, hang on, what does the human customer need? What's my strategy here? And you know, being confident that you've got a firm idea of what you're looking to achieve, and then employing the right tactics and you know, execution underneath that, as opposed to feeling that temptation of, well, hang on, I've now got to be on TikTok and I've got to be across this and I've got to get, as we said, ChatGPT writing all my captions. It's like, no, there's a lot of shiny new toys in marketing, and staying focused and true on, we're here to influence human behavior. Psychology doesn't change. What, you know, the fundamentals of good marketing campaigns and good creatives and things that are most effective actually in 20 years hasn't shifted that much. It's changed a lot less than you think.
Well said. I like that. I think that's a nice place to finish. Thank you so much, Catherine. Really appreciate you sharing your experience and your knowledge and your time with us. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having me, Emma. I loved it. Enjoyed talking to you.
More than welcome.